Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Untold Chapters. Huge thanks to everyone joining us live right now, and a warm welcome to our dedicated audience joining us from YouTube as well. Before we crack open case file #004, do us a favor, hit that like button and subscribe to join the Bureau. We are expanding our investigations into TV series like dark and animes like Death Note very soon. You don't want to miss those files.
Yeah, absolutely. It is really great to have you all here with us today.
So today we are opening up a particularly disturbing dossier, case file, #004, and we're diving into Verity by Colleen Hoover, and, we are just going to drop you right into the deep end of the psychological abyss today.
Oh, we really are. It is a heavy one.
It is.
Yeah.
Because we are investigating a scenario that hinges on one terrifying central question. Is the manuscript a confession of a monster or the creative survival mechanism of a victim?
And I am just going to plant my flag right now, right at the top of this investigation. It's a confession. I mean, I'm firmly, unequivocally team manuscript.
Really, just right out of the gate.
Right out of the gate. As a forensic psychologist, when I look at this case file, I see the undeniable clinical anatomy of a psychopath. I mean, the manipulation, the severe lack of effective empathy, the violent ideation, it is just textbook.
Okay, well, I hear your clinical assessment, but I have to fiercely disagree with you there. I am planting my flag firmly on team letter.
I figured you might.
Yeah, because I just don't think you're looking at a psychopathic confession at all. I think you are looking at, honestly, the ultimate example of severe narrative gaslighting.
Narrative gaslighting.
Yes, I believe we are analyzing the desperate primal survival instinct of a deeply traumatized woman who was essentially cornered by a murderous husband.
Well, I welcome that pushback, I really do. But to believe the letter is the truth, you have to actively ignore the forensic evidence of how this woman operated within her own family unit, long before any violence actually occurred.
I don't know about ignoring it. I think it's about interpreting it differently.
But today, we are conducting a rigorous psychological dissection. I mean, we have two completely conflicting, mutually exclusive documents, a hidden manuscript and a buried letter.
And surrounding them, we have three deeply damaged individuals just totally caught in a web of their own making.
Exactly. And for you listening right now, you aren't just an audience member today. You are the third investigator in the room with us.
That's right. I want you to listen to the psychological evidence we present, because by the end of this deep dive, you are going to have to choose a side.
But to understand these conflicting documents, we really can't just start with the papers themselves.
No, we have to establish the psychological baseline of the person reading them. Our primary witness, Lowen Ashley.
Because before she even sets foot in the Crawford estate, before she reads a single word, she is fundamentally broken.
She really is. She is the perfect mark.
If you were designing an experiment in psychological manipulation, Lowen is the exact profile you would select. She is a highly vulnerable, highly isolated observer.
Let's talk about why she's so vulnerable, right? Because the inciting incident of this entire case file is just horrific.
It's incredibly graphic.
It is. So Lowen is standing on a crowded street in Manhattan. She watches a pedestrian step off the curb, and he's just staring at his phone. She calls it death by routine.
Which is such a chilling phrase.
It really is. And he gets hit by a truck, and his head is literally crushed under the tire.
Right in front of her.
Right in front of her. She describes the sound as popping like a champagne cork, and she is standing so close to the impact that she is literally covered in his blood.
Yeah, she says she is painted like a Jackson Pollock canvas.
Yes, a Jackson Pollock canvas. The visceral horror of that moment is staggering. How do you even process that?
Well, we have to unpack the neurology of what happens to a person in that exact second. Because when you witness sudden, catastrophic violence like that, your brain's amygdala essentially hijacks your entire nervous system.
It's an overload.
A complete overload. It floods your body with cortisol and adrenaline. But what's fascinating about Lowen is her immediate psychological reaction. She doesn't scream. She doesn't panic.
She just completely dissociates.
Exactly. She goes totally numb.
She just wants to disappear into the crowd.
Right. And that numbness isn't just from the accident. We have to look at her compounding trauma, because she explicitly notes that she moved to New York City 10 years ago, specifically to be invisible.
She wants the anonymity.
Yes. She seeks out the indifference of the city because she's already avoidant. And on top of that chronic isolation, she has spent the last year locked in her apartment, caring for a mother who is dying of cancer.
And her mother just passed away, right? Like a week prior to this accident?
A week prior, yes.
Ugh.
This is her very first day stepping out of her apartment. So think about that. She is emotionally bankrupt, deeply secluded, and now she has been physically marked by the sudden random nature of death.
Her baseline is severe desensitization.
The baseline is completely shattered.
It's like her emotional immune system is totally wiped out. And into this exact moment of shock steps Jeremy Crawford,
A complete stranger.
a total stranger. He pulls her out of the crowd, takes her into a coffee shop bathroom, locks the door to give her privacy, and literally gives her the shirt off his back so she can strip off her blood-soaked clothes.
It is, on the surface, this incredibly chivalrous, romantic gesture.
Yeah, like something out of a movie.
Yeah.
But psychologically, it establishes this bizarre immediate intimacy. Now, earlier in our notes, you called this a trauma bond, but I want to challenge you on that, or at least clarify something.
Go for it.
Isn't a true trauma bond specifically about a cycle of abuse and positive reinforcement, like Stockholm Syndrome? Jeremy is just being nice to her, so what is actually happening in her brain in that bathroom?
That is a brilliant distinction, and you are absolutely right. In clinical terms, a true trauma bond requires a power imbalance and a cycle of punishment and reward from an abuser.
Which Jeremy isn't doing here.
No, he's not. What is happening in that bathroom is something called the misattribution of arousal, combined with accelerated intimacy through a shared high-stress event.
Okay, break that down for me. Misattribution of arousal.
Sure. So, when your body is in a state of high physiological arousal, your heart is pounding, you are sweating, your adrenaline is spiking from a near-death experience, your brain desperately looks for context to explain that intense feeling.
Like, it needs a reason for why you're freaking out.
Exactly. And if a calm, attractive, protective figure steps into that high arousal environment, your brain can easily misinterpret that fear-based adrenaline as intense romantic or interpersonal attraction.
Oh, wow. That makes total sense.
It's why people fall in love in war zones or, after surviving natural disasters. The physiological symptoms of terror and intense attraction are remarkably similar.
So her brain is confusing the shock of the gory accident with an intense magnetic connection to Jeremy.
Precisely. And Jeremy accelerates it. I mean, they are locked in this tiny bathroom. She is half-dressed, washing a dead man's blood off her skin, and Jeremy drops a psychological bomb of his own.
Right, because he looks at her and says, I pulled my 8-year-old daughter's body out of a lake 5 months ago.
Wow. Yeah. He sees her trauma, and he just raises the stakes.
He totally does. He recognizes the profound despair in her, and he matches it with his own catastrophic grief.
And when two people share intense vulnerability in a highly charged environment, the brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, at massive levels to create a sense of safety.
So they aren't trauma bonding in the abusive sense. They are, like, trauma colliding.
Trauma colliding. I really like that phrase. It's perfectly accurate.
It's like he absorbs her grief over her mother and counters it with something even heavier. Lowen literally feels her own trauma shrink in comparison to his tragedy.
And this immediately establishes the power dynamic for everything that follows. Lowen is neurobiologically primed to view Jeremy as this tragic, noble savior figure.
He is the man who rescues you when there is blood on your hands.
Exactly. And that framing is absolutely critical when she finally travels to the Crawford estate in Vermont.
Right, because she goes there because Jeremy hires her to sort through the notes of his wife, Verity, who is a famous author, now in a vegetative state after a car crash.
And as investigators, we have to treat the environment of that estate just like a character in this file.
Oh, absolutely.
Environmental psychology dictates that the spaces we inhabit fundamentally alter our cognition and our behavior.
And the details of this house are practically screaming at her to turn around and run.
Red flags everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
She arrives at this secluded, multi-million-dollar estate, and let's just look at the architecture. She notices the wrought iron security gates first. And the pattern on top of the gates isn't floral or geometric. It resembles spider webs.
Spider webs, it's so overt.
Then she looks at the roof, which she describes as slate gray, like an angry storm cloud. The entire left side of the house is covered in ivy, but she doesn't see it as a charming, countryside detail.
How does she perceive it?
She perceives it as a creeping, slow-moving cancer.
A cancer, wow.
And the only pop of color on this massive, dark, oppressive stone structure is the front door, which is blood red.
Every single one of those architectural details serves as an environmental prime.
A prime.
Yeah. Priming is a psychological phenomenon where exposure to one stimulus subconsciously influences your response to a subsequent stimulus. She's being primed for dread.
I was thinking about it like a Venus flytrap. You know, the plant doesn't look dangerous to the fly. It looks inviting until the jaws snap shut.
That's a great analogy.
But this house doesn't even bother looking inviting. It looks like a literal trap from the outside, a spiderweb gate. You don't ignore that kind of subconscious warning. Why does she still walk through the door?
Because of that misattributed arousal we just talked about, her attachment to Jeremy completely overrides her survival instincts.
So the pull of the savior is stronger than the fear of the trap.
Exactly. But notice her specific choice of metaphors. She compares the ivy to cancer. This is a direct psychological projection.
Because of her mom?
Yes, she just watched her mother waste away from cancer for a year. By projecting that specific disease onto the house, she is subconsciously recognizing that this environment is terminal.
Terminal. That gives me chills.
It will consume whatever is inside it.
It's like she recognizes the house has a soul, and the soul is malignant. She even calls the people in the house chronics, people who are just doomed to chronic tragedy.
And once she walks through that blood-red door, the psychological walls immediately start closing in.
They really do, because she is assigned to work in Verity's office, and it's a room filled with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a desk that stretches across the entire wall.
It's a highly intimate, intensely personal space.
Very intimate. Lowen even compares it to rummaging through Verity's underwear drawer. And it is in this specific space that she uncovers the first major piece of forensic evidence.
The hidden autobiography.
The manuscript.
And this is where we plunge into the dark admissions. And honestly, this is where the debate between you and I really begins. It is. And I want to lay out the facts of this manuscript from a purely clinical perspective.
Go ahead.
Verity writes this autobiography to document her relationship with Jeremy and later her pregnancies. The admissions she makes are beyond disturbing.
They are horrific.
She admits to deliberately attempting to abort her unborn twin daughters by performing dangerous physical acts while Jeremy is asleep. She literally didn't want them to exist.
Right.
And later, after they are born, she admits to standing over her infant daughter's crib and physically choking the baby just to silence her crying.
Okay, let me pause you right there, because you are reading this as a literal, factual confession of abuse.
I am.
But this is exactly where I have to push back.
Yeah.
We cannot ignore the profession of the source here. Verity Crawford is a highly successful, best-selling suspense thriller writer.
I don't see how that negates the psychopathy on the page.
Because she isn't just any writer. She is famous specifically for writing from the perspective of the villain. Critics praise her because her narrators seem genuinely psychotic.
Right, but
We have a woman who makes millions of dollars constructing incredibly convincing, pitch-dark fictional narratives. Why are we assuming this is a true diary and not a draft for a new book?
because of the specificity of the psychopathology on display. As a professional, when we evaluate for psychopathy using tools like the Hare Psychopathy Checklist, we are looking for very specific traits.
Like what?
A profound lack of effective empathy, pathological lying, cunning and manipulative behavior, and a terrifyingly shallow emotional affect. What Verity writes in that manuscript isn't just dark fiction. It aligns perfectly with the clinical profile of a psychopath.
Well, wait, explain the difference between effective empathy and cognitive empathy for me, because I think that's crucial here to your argument.
Absolutely. So cognitive empathy is the ability to understand what someone else is feeling. You could look at a crying person and know intellectually that person is sad.
Right, you recognize the emotion.
Exactly. And psychopaths have excellent cognitive empathy. It's how they manipulate people so well. They know exactly which emotional buttons to push.
Okay. And effective empathy.
Effective empathy is the ability to actually share that feeling, to feel distress yourself when you see someone else in pain. Psychopaths completely lack effective empathy.
So they know you're hurting, they just do not care.
Exactly. They feel nothing about your pain. And we see this perfectly illustrated in the manuscript when her daughter Chasten dies.
The sleepover allergy incident?
Yes. Chasten dies from a severe allergic reaction at a sleepover. Now, a normal mother would experience universe-shattering grief.
Of course.
But Verity's internal monologue in the manuscript doesn't express maternal devastation. Her primary emotion is annoyance.
Annoyance. It's sickening.
She is genuinely annoyed that the other twin, Harper, survived. She explicitly writes that she wishes Harper had died instead, or that both had died, simply because she was tired of Jeremy's grief distracting him from giving her attention.
That is dark.
That isn't just a writer exploring a dark thought. That is callousness on a pathological, structural level. You don't just invent that specific lack of effect if you don't possess it.
Okay, I see your point about the callousness. It is incredibly specific. But doesn't your psychopathy diagnosis have a massive, glaring contradiction?
What contradiction?
Well, if she is a textbook psychopath who lacks the ability to form real attachments, how do you explain her absolute, all-consuming obsession with Jeremy?
That is the one fascinating deviation from the standard profile, I will admit. And it's what makes this case file so complex.
Because psychopaths usually discard people, right?
Typically, yes. They view people as tools. When a tool is no longer useful, they discard it and move on to a new target. But Verity has this singular, consuming fixation on her husband.
She writes that she was his sole reason for living.
Yes, until he discovered the one thing that meant more to him than I did, meaning the children. She views her own children not as human beings to be nurtured, but as parasites.
Parasites draining the attention of her primary host.
Exactly. Her obsession with Jeremy isn't love in the neurotypical sense. It is ownership.
And that ownership manifests in some incredibly bizarre, primitive ways.
Very primitive.
Because while Lowen is reading this manuscript during the day, she is sleeping in the guest room at night. But one night, she wakes up from sleepwalking, and she is in Verity and Jeremy's master bedroom.
Which is terrifying in itself.
Right, and while she's in there, she finds something on the solid wooden headboard of the bed. Misaligned bite marks.
Bite marks.
Verity had literally bitten into the solid wood of the headboard during intimacy with Jeremy. She left a physical, violent mark.
That detail is staggering when you look at it through the lens of evolutionary psychology.
Yeah.
Biting is one of our most primitive reptilian brain functions.
It's totally animalistic.
It is a territorial marking.
Right.
In the animal kingdom, scent marking, or physical scarring of an environment, is a way to declare dominance and ownership. Verity is branding her environment.
She is creating a permanent record.
She is creating a permanent physical record that says, this space and this man belong to me.
But here's where it gets truly wild. What does Lowen do when she eventually crosses that line and sleeps with Jeremy in that exact same bed?
This part is fascinating.
She is lying there, she finds Verity's bite marks on the wood, and she leans over and bites down over them. She bites the wood harder, intentionally trying to erase Verity's presence.
That behavior requires a deep dive into the psychology of identity integration and mirroring. Lowen isn't just taking Verity's job as a writer. She isn't just sleeping with Verity's husband.
She's taking over.
By biting that headboard, she is physically attempting to overwrite Verity's existence.
It's like a psychological identity theft.
Exactly. Lowen came into this house feeling invisible, feeling like a ghost. Now, she is trying to manifest herself by completely consuming the identity of the woman who was already there. She is integrating herself into the psychodrama of the house.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the psychological pressure cooker to finally explode. Because as Lowen reads more and more of this horrifying manuscript, the atmosphere of the Crawford estate begins to completely shatter her reality testing.
Her grip on reality gets very loose.
Very loose. Because think about her daily reality. She is living down the hall from a woman who, according to this manuscript, is a child-murdering psychopath.
But the woman down the hall is supposed to be brain dead, completely immobile and unresponsive.
And this is where the paranoia and gaslighting really take over, because supposed to be is the operative phrase. Lowen starts experiencing things that defy logic.
Creeping, terrifying things.
The television in the living room suddenly turns on by itself when no one else is around. Lowen is outside, looks up at the second-floor window, and swears she sees Verity standing there, staring down at her.
And then the absolute peak of this terror.
Yeah, Lowen is downstairs, she looks up, and she sees Verity standing at the top of the stairs looking right at her. It's like a scene out of a horror movie.
But when she screams for Jeremy...
He comes running, they go to Verity's room, and she is back in bed, perfectly tucked in, staring blankly at the ceiling, acting entirely comatose.
As forensic investigators, this is the moment we have to heavily evaluate Lowen's credibility as a witness.
You think she's hallucinating?
I'm saying we have to ask if we can trust her perception. Because we have established that Lowen suffers from severe parasomnias. She is a chronic sleepwalker. She has night terrors.
Right, but how much do night terrors and sleepwalking actually affect someone's waking grip on reality? I mean, during the day.
Immensely. When you suffer from chronic parasomnias, the boundary between the subconscious dream state and the conscious waking state becomes incredibly porous.
So the dream bleeds into the waking hours.
Exactly. Lowen is so terrified of her own unconscious actions that she used to barricade herself in her apartment in New York. When she gets to the Crawford estate, she actually asks Jeremy to install a lock on the inside of bedroom door to keep herself contained at night.
That is so sad to be that afraid of yourself.
Think about the psychological toll of that. You cannot trust your own brain when the sun goes down. You are essentially gaslighting yourself on a nightly basis. So, if we have a witness whose reality testing is that compromised, how reliable is she when she claims to see a paralyzed woman walking the halls?
It's a very fair point. If you know your brain lies to you at night, it's easy to convince yourself it's lying to you during the day. But Lowen doesn't just passively spiral into madness. She actively tries to test her environment.
She conducts a very dangerous experiment.
She does. In one scene, Jeremy has placed Verity in her wheelchair in the living room to watch TV. Lowen is alone with her. Lowen takes a solid, heavy wooden ball from a decorative bowl
And she just winds up through.
and aggressively hurls it right at Verity's feet. It smashes into the floor with a loud crack, inches from her toes. And Verity, she doesn't flinch, she doesn't blink, not a single muscle twitches.
Which brings up a fascinating neurological question. If Verity is faking her condition, how much cognitive discipline does it take to suppress the natural startle reflex?
It has to be almost impossible, right? Like when someone pretends to throw a punch at your face, you can't help but blink. Your body reacts before your brain even processes it.
Precisely. The startle reflex is governed by the brainstem and the amygdala. It is an evolutionary defense mechanism designed to protect you from sudden, impending threats.
You can't just think your way out of it.
No, it happens in milliseconds, entirely subconsciously. The level of top-down cognitive control required to simply stare blankly while a heavy wooden object smashes into the floor inches from your body is almost superhuman.
So you're saying she really is paralyzed?
It suggests either a total lack of neurological function, meaning she really is brain damaged, or an extreme psychopathic hypervigilance where she is constantly actively suppressing her own central nervous system.
That second option is absolutely terrifying. That she is just trapped in her own body, intensely focused every single second on not moving a millimeter.
It's the ultimate long con.
But the ambiguity doesn't last long because the manuscript pushes Lowen to the absolute breaking point. She finds the chapter detailing the day the second twin, Harper, died.
This is the narrative climax of the manuscript.
It is. Verity writes that she and Harper were out on the lake in a canoe. Harper leans over the edge, and Verity admits that she intentionally tipped the canoe.
But it gets worse.
Much worse. She tells her young daughter to hold your breath right before they go into the water. She knows that by telling a panicking child to hold their breath, the child will inevitably gasp underwater and inhale the lake water.
It is the premeditated, calculated murder of her own child.
When Lowen reads that specific chapter, her entire psychological framework collapses. She can't hold the secret anymore. The cognitive dissonance is just too loud.
So she takes the manuscript to Jeremy.
She forces him to read it.
Wow.
And the confrontation that follows is perhaps the most critical, violent sequence in this entire case file.
Jeremy reads his wife's confession. He realizes that the woman he has been painstakingly caring for murdered his daughter.
He storms into Verity's room, locks the door, and threatens to go to the police. He tells her he is handing the manuscript over and having her locked away in a cell forever.
And that is the exact moment Verity breaks character.
Finally.
After months of playing a vegetable, after not flinching at a wooden ball, she opens her eyes. She sits up in bed. She gets to an offensive posture and starts begging him.
She claims she had to fake the injury, that she can explain everything.
Imagine the psychological whiplash Jeremy experiences in that second. His reaction is pure, visceral, unadulterated rage.
It's instantaneous.
In a fraction of a second, he realizes he's been living with his daughter's murderer. But more than that, he realizes he has been manipulated every single day.
Right, he has been bathing her.
Bathing her, changing her diapers, spoon-feeding her, while she was fully conscious, silently mocking his grief. His brain simply cannot process the magnitude of that betrayal. He snaps.
And he begins to strangle her.
He does.
And here is where we need to intensely debate the mechanics of what happens next, because Lowen is in the room.
Yes, she is.
And Lowen isn't just a horrified bystander watching a domestic dispute turn deadly. Jeremy is choking Verity, but it's loud, she's thrashing, it's messy.
It's disorganized.
Exactly. Lowen steps forward and literally coaches him on how to commit the perfect murder.
She instructs him.
She says make her vomit. Cover her nose and mouth until she stops breathing. It'll look like she aspirated in her sleep.
It is cold-blooded, tactical, forensic instruction.
Exactly. This is why I say Lowen is not a passive victim here. She actively orchestrates the methodology of a murder. Let's talk about why a seemingly normal woman who was too scared to sleep without a lock on her door is suddenly directing an execution.
We have to look at a concept called moral disengagement.
Okay, what is that?
It's a psychological process where a person convinces themselves that ethical standards do not apply to a specific situation. Lowen has read the manuscript. She fully believes Verity's a monster who kills children.
So she feels justified.
In Lowen's mind, she isn't committing murder. She is exterminating a threat. She is protecting Jeremy and his surviving son, Crew. She neutralizes her own morality by framing the act as righteous justice.
But is it just righteous justice? Or is it Machiavellianism? Because the result of this justice is incredibly convenient for Lowen.
It is very convenient.
She provides the methodology to secure Jeremy for herself. She took the woman's career, she moved into her house, she slept with her husband, and finally she orchestrates taking the woman's life.
She weaponizes the manuscript.
She weaponizes it to execute Verity and clear her own path to the perfect life.
From a clinical standpoint, yes. Lowen exhibits high-level Machiavellian traits in that moment. Machiavellianism involves interpersonal manipulation, a cynical disregard for morality, and a focus on self-interest and deception.
She checks all those boxes.
She uses Jeremy's rage as a murder weapon, so her own hands stay relatively clean. And because they stage it as an aspiration, the murder seems totally justified and perfectly hidden.
The case seems closed, the monster is dead, and the hero gets the family.
Until months later.
Right. We fast forward. Lowen is now pregnant with Jeremy's child. They are living a seemingly idyllic life in the estate, and a single hidden detail rewrites this entire psychological evaluation.
The twist that changes everything.
Jeremy's son, Crew, mentions offhand one day that his mother used to hide pictures under the floorboards in her room. Lowen waits until she is alone, goes into Verity's old room, pries up the loose floorboard, and reaches into the dark.
And what does she pull out?
She pulls out a picture, a knife, and a hidden letter addressed to Jeremy.
The alternate truth.
And I am fiercely defending the contents of this letter, because this letter completely shatters your psychopathy theory.
I don't know about shatters, but let's hear it.
In it, Verity explains that the manuscript, the horrific confession that got her murdered, was entirely a writing exercise.
A writing exercise.
Yes. Her editor, Amanda, had suggested a technique called antagonistic journaling to help Verity get into the mindset of a villain for her next book. She was instructed to take her real life, her real crushing grief over Chasten's death, and channel it into a fictional, highly exaggerated, evil version of herself.
Okay, explain the psychology of that to me. Why would a grieving mother write about murdering her own child?
Because grief does bizarre things to the brain. She was writing the absolute opposite of what she actually felt as a coping mechanism.
A coping mechanism, that extreme.
Think about neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself. When you are suffocating from trauma, sometimes the only way to process it is to externalize it, to pour that dark, chaotic energy into a character you can control.
So she's compartmentalizing the trauma.
It's like an actor doing intense method acting or someone doom-scrolling through terrible news to feel a sense of control over the anxiety. She was purging her darkest intrusive thoughts onto the page so they wouldn't consume her real mind.
I understand the theory of narrative psychology and how writing can be therapeutic. I really do. But let me present the clinical counterargument.
Let me have it.
If I am a textbook psychopath, and I know the net is closing in, if I suspect my husband is catching on to my lies, or if I know my physical health is failing, my ultimate, brilliant failsafe is to plant a letter, framing him as the user.
Framing Jeremy.
It is the ultimate manipulation from beyond the grave. Think about the placement. A letter hidden perfectly under a loose floorboard where a curious child or a snooping new wife would eventually find it.
Like a trap.
It acts like a psychological time bomb, designed to inject doubt and destroy Jeremy's peace forever.
That's a clever theory, I admit. But the letter contains a detail about the car crash that is far too specific to just be a manipulation.
The untold motive.
Yes, the untold motive of the crash. Verity writes that Jeremy found the manuscript before she got into her car that day.
Wait, before the crash?
Before. She writes that she was upstairs, heard a crash in her office, walked in, and Jeremy was standing there reading the manuscript. He flew into a blind rage, assuming the fictional journal was a true confession.
So he attacked her then?
He strangled her right there in the office. She actually passed out from lack of oxygen.
And what happened when she regained consciousness?
She woke up in the passenger seat of her own SUV. Her hands and feet were bound with duct tape. Her mouth was taped shut. She was unbuckled. And Jeremy was in the driver's seat, driving them into the woods.
And he crashes the car into a tree. But why a tree?
Exactly. Why a tree? This is the detail that proves the letter is real, because the very last line of Verity's manuscript, the manuscript Jeremy had just read, was, "So be it. Maybe I'll just drive my car into a tree."
Oh, wow.
Jeremy wasn't just trying to kill her in a random accident. He was staging a suicide perfectly tailored to match her own fictional manuscript.
That is incredibly calculated.
He drove the car into a tree at high speed, knowing he had his seatbelt on and she didn't, hoping the impact would kill her. And he knew that if the police investigated, the manuscript sitting on her desk would serve as the perfect suicide note and confession.
The psychological implications of that are staggering. If that is true, then her survival mechanism, faking the vegetative state, wasn't to avoid the police for killing Harper.
No. She survived the crash, woke up from a coma in the hospital, and realized her husband had just tried to violently murder her based on a misunderstood creative writing exercise.
Think about her reality in that hospital bed.
It's a nightmare. If she opened her eyes and said, "Jeremy, I'm fine. It was just a story. I didn't hurt Harper," he wouldn't believe her. He had already decided she was a monster.
If she showed any signs of cognitive function, he would just finish the job.
Exactly. She faked being a vegetable for months out of pure, primal, terrifying survival instinct.
She was in the ultimate state of hypervigilance.
She was a hostage in her own body. She lived in constant waking terror of the man who was bathing her, feeding her, and smiling at her, just waiting for the day she could safely access her bank accounts and escape with her surviving son. It is the most horrifying domestic abuse scenario imaginable.
The paradigm shift here is monumental. I mean, if the letter is true, Jeremy is a reactionary, violent, attempted murderer who couldn't separate fact from fiction.
Right, and Lowen.
And Lowen, our supposed victim, just helped him finish the job on an innocent, deeply grieving, terrified mother. But if the manuscript is true, the letter is a psychopath's insurance policy. A brilliant, intricate piece of fiction designed to torture Jeremy, gaslight Lowen, and rewrite history from the grave.
And this brings us to the final critical action in the case file. Confronted with these two mutually exclusive reality-breaking truths, Lowen has to make a choice about what to do with the letter.
And look at her visceral, immediate reaction to finding it.
It's wild. She doesn't take the letter down to Jeremy to confront him. She doesn't ask for the truth. She takes the letter and locks herself inside the bathroom.
She panics.
She rips the paper into tiny pieces. She flushes a handful of it down the toilet. But the pieces, they have Jeremy's name written on them.
She doesn't flush them.
No, she puts them in her mouth. She literally chews and eats the paper. She swallows the evidence to ensure it is destroyed completely.
We have to analyze the psychology of that specific action. Why not just burn it? Why consume it? Consuming the paper is a physical manifestation of internalizing a secret.
It's so visceral.
It is the ultimate act of cognitive dissonance resolution. She is faced with information that destroys her reality. The reality that her husband is a murderer and she is an accomplice. Her brain cannot process that without breaking, so she physically destroys the trigger.
But is she doing it out of a twisted sense of love to protect Jeremy from the soul-crushing guilt of knowing he murdered his innocent wife?
Or is she doing it out of pure, selfish self-preservation? To protect her own new, perfect life, her pregnancy, her wealth, her new career from collapsing into a police investigation?
I think it's both. She is protecting the life she stole, but the result is exactly the same, and I have to agree with you on this final point. Regardless of which document you believe is true, Lowen has fundamentally become a villain in her own right.
She has crossed the moral event horizon.
She really has. The cycle of chronics, the people doomed to chronic tragedy that she observed on her very first day, is continuing right through her.
This is the inescapable paradox of case file, #004. And I maintain my clinical stance. I believe the manuscript is the raw, unfiltered truth of a psychopathic mind. The callousness is just too consistent. The letter is her final brilliant manipulation, a failsafe designed to rot the mind of whoever found it.
And I firmly maintain that the letter is the horrific reality. The manuscript was nothing more than a dark, creative exercise that a murderous husband weaponized against a grieving mother to justify his own violence.
Two documents, two completely incompatible realities, and no reliable witnesses left to tell the truth.
We've laid out the psychological evidence. We've debated the mechanisms of trauma, psychopathy, and manipulation. Now you have to make the call. Step into the comments section right now and give us your forensic verdict. Are you team manuscript or are you team letter?
Choose carefully. Because of the psychology of your choice, whether you were more inclined to believe in the hidden monster or the framed victim, will say as much about your own psychological baseline as it does about Verity Crawford.
And I want to leave you with one final haunting thought to mull over. Think about Lowen sitting on the tile floor of that bathroom, swallowing those pieces of paper. By literally ingesting Verity's words, by taking them inside her own body, hasn't Lowen just become the new Verity? She is pregnant with Jeremy's child. She's living in that exact same dark, oppressive house. She is sleeping in that exact same bed over the bite marks. Now, she's keeping a monstrous, reality-altering secret from Jeremy locked inside her head. If spaces truly dictate our behavior, if that house truly has a malignant soul, maybe it didn't just want a new coat of paint. Maybe that house demanded a new author to write its next tragedy. So I ask you, when you look at your own life, your own narratives, which truth are you